Chapter 31. Game Over. William's world was whizzing around him. Of all the impossible things he'd experienced that night, his father's last words were by far the most utterly, mind-blowingly unbelievable. As he watched his dad step out into the street, standing in between the hunter's raised rifle and the distant dinosaur, William searched his brain, searched his heart. Could that wretched man, standing like a statue carved out of pure evilness, really be his uncle? "Hello, Huxley," Mr. Trundle's voice interrupted William's thoughts. "Huxley? Now that's a name I've not been called in a very long time," sneered the hunter, keeping his rifle raised. "You've gone too far this time, Hux, even by your standards," said Mr. Trundle. "Well, I couldn't have done it without you, Robert," said the hunter, with a sly grin. "If it hadn't been for this beautiful Christmas card, I might never have found a way to catch Fatty Claus and his sleigh." The hunter reached inside his leathery coat pocket and pulled out the Trundle's traditional Christmas card with the photo of Mr. Trundle and William on the front. I'm just going to show you this quick picture. Oh dear, doesn't look good for Mr. Trundle, does it? William gasped. The Christmas cards they sent each year to their distant relatives. Great Nana Joan, second cousin Sam, Uncle H. Trundle. H. Trundle. Huxley Trundle. William suddenly knew it was true. All of it. The hunter was his uncle. "Santa, it was my dad. He was the other little boy in the North Pole, wasn't he?" William asked. Santa nodded. It all became clear to William. That's why Dad loves Christmas so much. That's how he knows so much about it, William realised. And why he's devoted his whole life since then to being good, Santa said, and William remembered that his father had been banished from the North Pole. "This has to end, now. Put the gun down," Mr. Trundle said firmly as he stood blocking the hunter's shot. "If you think I won't pull this trigger because you're my brother, you are in for a very nasty shock," the hunter said with evil honesty. "It doesn't have to be this way, Hux. We're family." "Family? Ha!" spat the hunter. "I know what family means to you. I know what you're really after, what your pathetic Christmas cards and countless letters over the years have really been for. Money. My money. Slicing you out of my life all those years ago was the best thing I ever did." "You've got it all wrong, my brother," replied Mr. Trundle. "I don't want the family money. I never have. Money causes more trouble than it's worth. That stuff has rotted your heart, Hux, but I want to buy it back with kindness." And as Mr. Trundle said those words, he offered his hand for his brother to shake. A full heart is worth more than a full wallet. The hunter paused. One eye was still glued to the sight of his rifle, while the other flickered momentarily to Mr. Trundle's outstretched hand. "You have precisely 3 seconds to get out of the way, or I'll blast you out of the way," the hunter said coldly as he closed his eye and took aim. William knew he wasn't bluffing. "Dad!" he called out. 3, said the hunter, his beady black eye plastered to the sight. Mr. Trundle didn't budge. 2, this isn't a game, little brother, the hunter warned. Mr. Trundle stayed put, defending the Christmasaurus. 1, bang! The gunshot rang out, deafeningly loud as it tore through the street. It knocked Mr. Trundle off his feet and sent him soaring through the air before he landed in a heap on the pavement. "Dad!" William screamed, tears exploding uncontrollably from his eyes. The hunter turned and faced him, the barrel of his smoking rifle pointing dangerously in William's direction. "Unless you want to say ta-ta to Santa Claus as well as your father tonight, you had better keep your mouth shut," whispered the hunter. William continued crying silently, not taking his eyes from his father's body, lying motionless on the snow. "Growler, it's time," said the hunter as he turned back towards the shadowy dinosaur and crept up the street. As soon as the hunter and his mutt had walked a few metres away and were focused on their prey, William made a silent dash for his dad, closely followed by Santa. As William reached his father, tears filled his eyes so that he couldn't see. He sobbed and sobbed. "Willy Poos, is that you?" whispered a soft, shaky voice. "Dad, you're alive," said William in amazement, quickly wiping away the tears. Mr. Trundle sat upon the pavement, looking completely confused. "Yes, I suppose I am," he said with surprise. "Well, stuff my turkey," Santa said in a jolly, hushed voice, as he pointed at a smoking bullet hole in Mr. Trundle's woolly Christmas jumper. Mr. Trundle placed his hand over his heart with a smile. Then he reached down inside the top of his jumper and pulled something out he had been wearing round his neck. It was a thin, worn piece of brown leather, and when he reached the end, William noticed that something was attached to it. "The piece of reindeer antler!" William gasped in amazement as the pointy, branch-like piece of horn popped out of Mr. Trundle's jumper. I've worn it round my neck all these years, Mr. Trundle said, looking up at Santa. He dangled a small piece of antler his evil brother had cut from the flying reindeer those many Christmases ago, and when Santa and William leant in closer, they saw... "The bullet," William said, at the same time as Santa. It was lodged deep inside the piece of antler. "It saved my life," said Mr. Trundle. "Well, there's one more in need of saving right now," Santa said in a deeply troubled voice, staring up the street. Mr. Trundle and William peeked out from their hiding place behind their neighbour's snow-covered car. They saw the hunter silently slip a sleek bullet into his repulsive rifle, lift it to his bloodshot eyeball, and release a puff of thick smoke from his pipe. Then they heard that awful, heart-stopping sound again. Bang! One single gunshot was all it took. It was violently loud as it zoomed down the street towards the shadowy dinosaur. "No!" William screamed. But it was too late. The hunter hit his target. The sun was gleaming, but there was no dinosaur silhouette any more. There was only a shadowy heap lying very still in the distance where the dinosaur had been. "Yippee! Yahoo! Hooray! It's mine! I did it! Did you see that shot, Growler, you silly old mutt? I shot him! I shot him! Ha!" The hunter screamed and cheered and celebrated with a vile dance in the middle of the street, whooping and waving at the sky. As he danced his wicked celebration, light, fluffy snowflakes started descending from above. William was crying. Santa was crying. Mr. Trundle was crying. There was nothing they could have done to stop it. It was game over. The hunter had won. He had killed the Christmasaurus. Now that is the end of the chapter, but I cannot leave it on that cliffhanger, so we're going to go straight into chapter 32, Feathers. "Growler, stay. Keep an eye on Fatty and the boy. Don't let them go anywhere. I'll deal with them in a minute. I'm going to fetch my prize," said the hunter, and Growler immediately turned his dirty, matted face towards the tearful trio, sobbing behind the car. The hunter puffed merrily on his pipe and whistled a little tune as he strutted proudly down the street. "Foolish dinosaur, coming back to save your friends, were you? Ha! It was all too easy," he cackled at the motionless dinosaur-shaped lump in the shadows ahead, whilst swatting away the irritating snowflakes that had begun falling onto his hard, scarred face. Suddenly, something got stuck in his mouth. It was soft and fluffy. "Pshh!" he spat. Then more of this odd falling fluff started brushing his face, getting in his eyes. "What the devil is this?" he said, and then he suddenly realised something most peculiar. They weren't snowflakes falling from the sky. They were feathers. "Feathers," the hunter said, waving them away from his face. They were falling as thick as a blizzard all around. The closer he got to the body of the dinosaur, the thicker this feather storm seemed to get. Is this some sort of trick? As the falling feathers cleared, he could see the lifeless lump of the body he had shot. "No, it can't be," muttered the hunter in disbelief. Lying on the ground where he expected to see the Christmasaurus was William's beautiful stuffed dinosaur toy. It was as close to a perfect replica of the Christmasaurus as you could get. Slightly smaller, of course, but from a distance you would never have been able to tell the two apart, and the hunter certainly couldn't, even through his super zoom telescopic sight. He marched over to it with his rifle aimed at its perfectly stitched head. "No," he gasped as he gazed into two lifeless golden buttons staring up from the snow. There was now a large bullet hole in the toy dinosaur's side, and its feathery stuffing was leaking out into the Christmas morning air and blowing away in the light breeze. But he must be here somewhere," the hunter whined. "I heard him roar with my own ears. He must still be close." And he was. As the hunter stood cursing at his misfortune, screaming maniacally at the wounded stuffed dinosaur on the ground, something was creeping up behind him. From the other end of the street, the crying crowd of criers quickly wiped away their tears as they saw something wonderful, something tremendous, something ferocious. It was the Christmasaurus, but he looked different from how he'd ever looked before. More dinosaur-like, protective, fierce, hungry. The hunter spun on the spot to find himself standing in the looming shadow of the Christmasaurus. He was face to face with an angry dinosaur. For the first time in his life, the hunter was being hunted. "Wait, just a clock tick," the hunter said nervously as he started backing away from the approaching dinosaur. "I wasn't really going to hang you on my wall. This is all just a misunderstanding." But as he spoke, he was fiddling with something behind his back. Click. It was his rifle, and it was reloaded and ready to fire up again. In a flash, the hunter swung around his deadly gun and aimed it straight at the Christmasaurus's head. The hunter was fast, and before the Christmasaurus had a chance to react, he placed his bloodshot eye on the telescopic sight and was ready to pull the trigger. He wouldn't miss this time. But as his finger tightened, something came hurtling through the air at tremendous speed. It was a small, hard, perfectly made snowball, and it flew down the street towards the hunter with such incredible speed and accuracy that there was no way he could avoid being hit. The unexpected ball of snow knocked the sniper rifle straight out of the hunter's bony fingers before he could pull the trigger. The hunter looked up just in time to see a giant set of white, glistening, razor-sharp dinosaur teeth coming towards him. Crunch! Gulp! The hunter was gone. The Christmasaurus swallowed him whole. There was nothing left of that beastly evil man. The Christmasaurus let out a big, stinky burp that stank of pipe smoke and money, and that was the last that anyone ever saw of the hunter. The Christmasaurus is a carnivore, it appears. Maybe an omnivore. Okay, not long to go, boys and girls, until we reach the end of our story.